Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kendrick. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Before we get into any of the football subjects, I want to go ahead and give you guys a little bit of a health update when it comes to me. So I've talked on a few different podcasts about this weird sensation I've been having going on in my throat. It hasn't been anything too major, but I've had this really, really weird feeling kind of at the base of my throat. The closest thing I can think of to relate it to is when you have like a cold and you have phlegm build up in your throat and you cough, you clear it, you're fine for a bit until the phlegm comes back and you get that feeling again. But then the thing is that you're just able to cough and you're able to clear it. Well, with this feeling, there hasn't been actually anything in my throat. It's just the sensation. So I'll cough, attempt to clear it, and nothing happens. The sensation is still there basically until the sensation actually goes away. And it has been going on for a few months. I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, this isn't going away. And if anything, it's just getting worse. So I need to go see a doctor. And I did an over the phone visit first because of COVID and everything. They don't just want people in the doctor's office, which is very understandable. And so they kind of diagnosed me over the phone, gave me a little remedy. It didn't make it go all the way away. So I went into the doctor, and she was a very, very nice woman. She basically diagnosed me after asking me a few questions. She gave me a kind of remedy, which was to basically take some stomach acid stuff, some stuff from my nose, different things like that, some different allergen type stuff, and I've been on it now for about maybe 3 weeks. Yeah, let's say 3 weeks or so, and I'm feeling much better. The sensation has basically gone away. It kind of comes back every now and then, but it's very, very faint. So I just gotta say thank you to her. She was wonderful. She has basically fixed the issue. Trust your medical professionals. Please, wear a mask. That's the moral of this little opening salvo, okay? Listen to the medical professionals. They know what they're talking about. They did the studying. They did all the schoolwork, okay? Listen to the doctors. But anyways, we got a lot of football stuff to get into today. Mike Zimmer, the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, he made some comments about having no fans at games. I think they're interesting. I want to talk about that a little bit. The Chiefs are doing their best Washington impression, and they are trying to make some changes for the better, be a bit more progressive, be a bit more politically correct, and I do not see any problem with that. We're going to get into that. Earl Thomas, he got involved in a little bit of drama over the weekend. I want to discuss that and his future with the Ravens. I might get into a bit of Cam Newton. I might save this for my next podcast, but I might get into some Cam Newton. But what I will get into, most certainly for the final topic of the day, the NFL.com, they came out with a list of expectations for rookie offensive players. I'm going to focus on the rookie quarterbacks because there was something about this list that just didn't sit right with me, and it was written by a very, very well-respected person among NFL circles, and so it really bothered me because I felt like I could have written this list because there was nothing on it that really stood out to me in a good way, I should say. But anyways, man, I have been loving watching these practice videos. These videos coming out of these great throws made by quarterbacks, whether they're veterans or rookies, some of the interceptions I've been seeing, the catches I've been seeing. I saw a wicked throw from Baker Mayfield to Odell Beckham in double coverage. That was awesome. I saw a few great catches by Minnesota wide receivers. I've been seeing great clips everywhere. And it's really, really been getting me amped up for this coming season, because this has been giving me more reassurance that there is going to be an NFL season. Because obviously a month ago, we had players tweeting, we want to play, but we want the NFL to actually have some good protocols and to listen to the medical professionals, because it didn't seem like they were. They were kind of trying to march to the beat of their own drum, and the players were like, no, we want safety. We kind of want to know what we're doing. We want more COVID testing, and the NFL eventually obliged. They actually did pretty quickly after the players did this, because the last thing that they want is for players to just all together hold out of the season. It would cost the NFL so much money that they don't want that to happen. And so watching all the footage of OTAs and of these practices and watching these guys do their thing has been really making me feel good. It's been nice to see some football content of some sorts, and it's getting me really amped up to see the season opener, which is the Texans and the Chiefs. And one of the big things about this game, though, it's not just that it's the Texans and the Chiefs. It's not that it's Deshaun Watson versus Patrick Mahomes. It's not the fact that when I think about the Texans and the Chiefs, I think about 24-0 and then 51-31 Chiefs comeback victory. It's not that. I think about the fact that the Chiefs are going to have 22% capacity filled at their stadium, which is approximately 16,000 fans. So at the opener, and of course this has been heavily discussed, right? What on earth are these games going to look like without fans? Baseball games, they are having no fans. NBA games, they're having virtual fans. At WWE events, they are having now virtual fans. Before that, they were having people kind of surround the ring. They were kind of fans, kind of not fans. And obviously it's all entertainment, and so it's kind of to add a bit more liveliness, I guess, to the product. But now they're going with virtual fans. The event looked really, really interesting. Obviously the sound is still not the same, but they're doing what they can. They're doing what they can to make the event, to make the product look a little bit better. All these leagues and businesses have been trying to figure out how exactly to handle this. Well, the NFL has taken a very, very interesting approach to this, which is basically, we're gonna let the teams individually decide how they want to go about this season. And this is something that Mike Zimmer, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, that he has had a problem with. So on Friday, during an interview, he was quoted in saying, "It looks like we're not going to have any fans in there early. That really stinks." And he also went on to talk about how the fans, especially Minnesota fans, they get so involved with the games, right? Obviously, they have the Skol chant, they have the horn. I mean, they are one of the loudest fan bases. Their arena is designed to help their sound. Right now, crowd sizes in Minnesota have been limited to 250 people, and Zimmer basically said he didn't see a point in opening up the building to 250 people, right? I mean, look, I'm just thinking about that discrepancy. The Chiefs, they're going to open the season with about 16,000 people. Right now in Minnesota, you can't have a gathering of more than 250. So what would the point be? I guess you could maybe say having some fans is better than no fans, but I guess in the context of at an NFL game, maybe not the best. That would look really, really awkward on TV. But he went on to say, "I think there are some unfair things going on around it as far as some teams can have fans and some teams can't," Zimmer said. So I think there is a competitive disadvantage in some of those areas. So, of course, the Vikings, at the moment, they're not going to have any fans at their stadium. The Packers, for at least I think they said the first 2 games of the season, they will not have any fans at the stadium. The Giants and Jets have come out and said they will have no fans at the stadium at all this season. But then there are other teams, the Ravens, they've said they plan on allowing a small portion of fans in their stadium. I think of course, Jerry Jones came out and said he wants to have fans at all of their home games. All these teams are just kind of doing their own thing. And this is a problem that I have had with the NFL and even with the NCAA on the NFL side of things. The commissioner, Roger Goodell, and the NFL front offices in general, they have had no problem mandating every team to follow something like the Rooney Rule, right? You have to interview at least, I think it's one person of color, one or two people of color. If you're gonna do a head coaching hire, a position hire, you need to interview people of color. They have no problem mandating that for every single team. Now, does every single team follow it necessarily? I think some of them have kind of found some loopholes to it where they bring a guy in, but he has no shot of actually getting the job, but they're just following the Rooney Rule. They already have the guy that they want to hire. I know the Cowboys kind of got involved in that last year because they hired Mike McCarthy almost instantly, but they said that technically we didn't not follow the Rooney Rule. It's whatever. But they have no problem mandating that. But you're telling me that the NFL can't mandate every single team either have this many fans or no fans at all? You're telling me that you can't find some number to put all these teams at? I just don't understand that. And one of my gripes with the NCAA is you have the guy the head of the NCAA come out and basically say, we have no control over this. We have no clue. The teams, we can't tell the teams to play. I think that's up to the conferences. What do you mean? What do you mean you don't have control? If you're the head of the NCAA, how do you not have control over what these conferences do? They're a part of the NCAA, and you run it. What do you mean that you can't mandate anything? You've got all these conferences out here doing their own thing. Some are saying no football this fall. Some are saying no football at all. And some are saying, we're gonna play ball. Right? It's so strange to me. It is so strange to me that these businesses are allowing teams to make the individual decisions. And I don't know if it's just they don't want to be responsible for if there is an outbreak at one of these stadiums, for people to then be able to look at the NFL and say, well, look what you did. You said this many fans can be here. This is your problem. But then at the same time, I feel like if there was an outbreak at a stadium that allowed fans, as compared to ones that haven't allowed fans, I feel like they could look at the NFL and say, why didn't you mandate no fans? Why didn't you mandate less fans? Why'd you let this team decide how many people come in? And I have read that what a lot of the qualifications are going to be to even get into the arena is that they're going to take your temperature, they're going to require you to wear a mask at all times, except for like when you're eating and drinking. Other than that, you're going to wear a mask. I don't know exactly how they're going to mandate that. Are they going to put like security around every single section of the stadium where fans are, and they're going to have to watch the fans, basically babysit them to make sure they're going to wear the masks? Because there are plenty of people out there that so do not want to wear a mask. There is still so many people that don't want to. So many people that still think it's a hoax. So I don't know exactly how they're going to mandate that. But with Mike Zimmer's comment saying that he feels like there's going to be a competitive disadvantage, there's part of me that believes that, but then there's part of me that also says, dude, no excuses. So with the NBA, there are just no fans. Everything is virtual. Even the noise is virtual. They do kind of have these pseudo home games where they will play like their entrance. They'll play, their cheering, everything, and the cheer for the other team will be more quiet. But they have these weird pseudo home games, but nonetheless, it's basically a neutral site game. Everyone is playing under the same exact conditions. So when it comes to these players who have come out and said, well, it's just really, really strange to play with no fans, it's a bit different. It's like, okay, well, no excuses, dude, because everyone is playing under the same exact circumstances that you are. Everyone's playing with no fans. We are all in the same freaking bubble as you, dude. So no excuses. Play your game. When it comes to the NFL, obviously that's not the situation. Let's just go ahead and do a hypothetical, right? So with the Vikings, let's just say the Vikings and the Lions, I don't know, they're going to face off week 1. And they're playing in Minneapolis. And there's no fans at the stadium. Are they going to do, are they going to put noise in? Are they going to pump noise in for the Vikings? I have no clue. I think they have a rule against that already in the NFL. So I don't know if they do that. So basically what you're going to tell me is they might be in Minnesota, but it's going to be a neutral site game. Both offenses are going to be able to hear each other completely clearly, as in like the cadences, the play calling, checks at the line, if the quarterback wants to change the play, all those things become super, super clear to hear. Because there's literally no crowd to drown out anything. And that's a big thing when teams are playing away games, and you're going to a place like a Seattle, Minnesota, Kansas City, Soldier Field, Green Bay, wherever it is, where the fan bases are wild and they pack the stadium every single time, that crowd is going to roar over the opposing offense, and it makes it difficult to hear everything. That's when you see sometimes offenses, they need to take a late timeout. They need to take a timeout when they really didn't want to, because the play just isn't able to really get through because the crowd is so loud. Teams like Seattle, they love having the 12s, right? That's the 12th man. They love having that crowd. Minnesota, they love their crowd. Kansas City, they broke the record for the loudest crowd. It was originally held by Seattle. It was broken by Kansas City. So these teams, there are teams out there that really, really pride themselves on their fan bases because they really help their team out. So basically what you're telling me is that you go to Minnesota, it is now a neutral site game. At least for the first 2 games, it is a neutral site game. But then let's just say you have Minnesota and Detroit, and then they go to Detroit. And Detroit, they have 10,000 fans in the stadium. 10,000, 15, I don't know. Let's just say they even have fans there. Could you technically say that that is a disadvantage? In one stadium, it was a neutral site game with no fans cheering for anybody, and then you go to the opposing team's stadium, and their stadium has 16,000 fans in it, and they're all Detroit fans, because I don't really know if people are gonna be traveling during the NFL season, as in I don't know if these fans are really gonna wanna risk going to these away games during COVID. Now, I'm sure there might be some, I don't know what all the rules are when it comes to their allowing fans at the stadiums. I really don't. I don't know all the ins and outs. I just know that there are certain teams that are allowing certain percentages of fans. But I'm going to assume not many people are going to want to travel to Detroit to go to an away game. So, if they have 16,000 people in the stadium, let's just say 95% of them are Lions fans. Is that a bit of a disadvantage? I don't know how much noise 15,000 people, I don't know what 95% of 16,000 people are, but let's just say if it's like 15,000 Detroit fans, and they're all screaming over your offense, could you basically say it's a bit of a disadvantage? Yeah, I wouldn't debate that. I wouldn't try to dispute that. That is a bit unfair. And that's when I think that the NFL, they need to seriously consider that. And I'm sure they have, and I'm guessing that the conclusion they've reached is them's just the breaks. But I will not say that Mike Zimmer is wrong, that it does kind of suck that there isn't a uniform rule. You have some of these teams that have decided there will be no fans at all. The Jets, the Giants, you have some of these teams that have come out, vocally said, we are going to have fans here. Jerry Jones, the Ravens at some point, the Packers at some point. I'm guessing the Vikings at some point are going to have fans there, but to start off the season, like many others, they are going to start it with no fans. This is a really interesting situation. At NBA games, it is totally a neutral site. There is nobody who's cheering for you more. the only people who are cheering for you are literally your benches. And of course, I mean, you do have the people that are on the screen, but you can't hear them. The only noise that you hear is what the actual arena pumps in itself. And I don't know if they're going to do that at these NFL games. I would assume they probably still play music. I would assume that they'll probably still have the announcers saying, like, oh, you know, this catch made 8 yards. I'm assuming that they're still going to have that. But having that roar when your defense makes a great play, having that roar when there's a touchdown catch, that adrenaline, that there are players out there that do feed off of it, it not being there for you, but it being there for the other team, I guess you could say it is a disadvantage. How much of a disadvantage, I do not know. Again, I don't know how much noise 16,000 people make in an arena that holds 60. I don't know how big of a difference that makes. But I will not say that Mike Zimmer is wrong when he says that it sucks. It sucks. It is unfair. It does create a competitive disadvantage. But I guess I would just say, you know, it's tough luck. You know, you hope at some point in time, if America had just handled COVID a bit better, we probably wouldn't be in this situation. We'd be able to have fans at all the games. Or just, I think if the NFL just took a bit more control, like the NFL has shown it can do in other situations, they could just say every team can have this many people, or I guess if all the teams can't agree on it, then no teams will be allowed to have any fans. That would be my assumption, but obviously that's not the way that they're doing this. So I guess it is what it is. But at the end of the day, no excuses. The fans are only part of it. The rest of it is what's going on in training camp, what's going on during all these scrimmages and these practices that you're doing. Every team has had the same amount of time as every other team. So, and there's injuries, there's all this stuff going on, whether or not your team is having good practices or not, that is all on the coaching staff and the players. That's all on you guys. The fans are only are only part of it. All the rest of it is what you guys can do individually as coaching staffs and players. So I do understand it is a bit of an excuse. It is, or maybe not an excuse is the right word. It is a bit of a reason. But if you lose a game and you go to that press conference and the first thing you say as a reason as to why you lost the game is because, oh, well, you know, we just didn't really have the fans. Dude, when you go to away games, more than likely you're not really going to have fans there. And there are still many teams that win away games. So I don't know how much credence I can put into it. I do think there is some, that there are some legs to the argument, but at the same time, I can't totally buy into it. So, I don't know. Anyways, coming up next, speaking of the Chiefs, they are doing their best Washington football team impression, and they are trying to move forward in a more positive direction to be more politically correct and less insensitive. We are going to get into that up next.
Listen up, sports bettors. This is Bryce and Ethan here to tell you about our favorite sports book, and that's BetUS. Football, basketball, and baseball are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. We only endorse one sports book, and that's BetUS.com. Why, you ask? BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the biz. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid.
That's right, Bryce. You need a sportsbook that offers everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, entertainment, and all kinds of crazy prop bets and future bets. Don't forget, call today at 1-800-MyBetUS. That's 1-800-MyBetUS, and they will walk you through on getting started. Nobody in the industry gives better bonuses than BetUS. Join now, mention GSMC, and you get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody can beat that. We bet at BetUS, so should you. Join BetUS today. That's BetUS.com or call 1-800-MyBetUS. Mention GSMC to get 150% in bonuses on your first deposit.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, we talked about Mike Zimmer's comments regarding no fans at games and basically whether or not I think that there's real merit to say it causes a true competitive mismatch, a true competitive disadvantage. I'm really not sure. I can understand both sides of it. I can definitely see from the coaching point of view, or from just really from the player's point of view, I can understand why they would say it would cause a competitive mismatch. You have some fan bases out there that are allowed to attend the games, and there are some teams that have said that at least for the first few weeks of the season there will be no fans, and then you have some teams that have said there will be no fans in general. So I definitely get that, right? If at your home game there's no fans, so it's basically a neutral site game, but then you go to somebody else's arena or stadium and they have fans there, it's a bit weird. Like you would kind of feel like it's a bit unfair to you. So I understand that, but at the same time, I just don't know if I'm willing to say that it is so egregious of a mismatch that it is just going to completely impact these teams and it's going to just derail their chances of winning these games. I don't know if I can go that far. But anyways, so obviously with 2020 has been, as I've said on numerous occasions, it has been one hell of a year. And it's especially been one hell of a year for the Washington football franchise. Just recently, Ron Rivera was diagnosed with lymph node cancer. And I really hope he's okay. I wish him a speedy recovery, and I hope that this does not impede him from being able to coach this season, because it would be a complete shame if this took him out for the season, right? This is his first year coaching the Washington football team. There has been so much change going on with this team this season, from the Washington Post article, basically labeling all of the harassment that has gone on in the franchise, to their name change, to the changing of the logo. They have dealt with so much. A new head coach. Obviously, there was the whole on the article. There was all the stuff about Jay Gruden and what was going on with him. Alex Smith is coming back. Will he be the starter? Will it be Dwayne Haskins? There's just been so much going on. So much going on with this team, and on top of it now, Ron Rivera has lymph node cancer. I really do hope that he is okay, and I hope that with his leadership and how good of a guy he is, I hope he can really turn around this franchise. But that is one of the big things that Washington did, is that they changed their logo, they changed their name, and they tried to move in a direction to be less offensive. And this was something that a lot of people appreciated, and then there were those who were diehard Washington football team fans saying they didn't want them to change history. The Washington franchise has been one of the oldest franchises in the league, and to change its name to many people was to get rid of a part of history. And my argument for that was basically, there are other teams that have changed their names before, and I labeled a few of them. Obviously the Hornets, they changed their name. The Titans, they changed their name. The Washington Wizards, they were once the Washington Bullets. They changed their name because of the amount of crime that was going on in Washington, D.C., and they figured that Washington Bullets wasn't exactly the best name. And my whole point is basically, if a franchise is trying to move forward, if they're trying to change for the better, That is all that is important. And I understand that change can be difficult, but change is a part of life, and you gotta just roll with it. If you're a rigid person and you cannot adapt, if you cannot change with the times, you will age out of this world. That is plain and simple. You will age out of this world. You will fall out of style. You have to be able to change. And that is something that now the Kansas City Chiefs are trying to do. When everyone was talking about Washington and talking about what was going on with their football team, I talked about it on this podcast and I said, hey, I am totally with it. Change all of it. Get rid of the name. Get rid of the logo. Change everything. Become less offensive. Do not use that derogatory term as the name. Do not use a Native American's head as your logo. I am with it. But can we also look at the Chiefs? Can we acknowledge that their chop and their chant, as cool as it is, especially when the crowd is in unison, when they are all synchronized, as cool as it is to watch and to listen to, can we acknowledge that that is very stereotypical of Native Americans? Can we acknowledge it doesn't take a degree to be able to put two and two together and realize where that chant comes from. I remember as a little kid, the first time I heard that chant, first thing that came to my mind was Native Americans. That was the first thing that came to my mind as a little kid. I don't remember how old I was. I might have been 9 when I first heard that chant. I instantly thought to myself, I was like, oh, Native Americans. But it was a football team. And, so the Chiefs, they went ahead and they released an article and everything. And basically what they have said is they are banning Native American headdresses and face paint. And there were a bunch of images that were attached to it. And you see examples of it. And it's a bunch of people who are wearing these headdresses and painting their face. The thing is that none of them look like they're Native American. All of them looked white, which falls under another category of, you could say, cultural appropriation. Now, they did release an article. I'll read a little bit of it here. They said, in 2014, we began a dialogue with a group of local leaders from a diverse American Indian backgrounds and experiences. As an organization, our goal was to gain a better understanding of the issues facing American Indian communities in our region and explore opportunities to both raise awareness of American Indian cultures and celebrate the rich traditions of tribes with a historic connection to the Kansas City area. They go on to talk about how we have discouraged fans from wearing headdresses for several years. Effective immediately, fans will be prohibited from wearing headdresses into the stadium. Face painting is still allowed for all fans, but any face paint that is styled in a way that references or appropriates American Indian cultures and traditions will be prohibited. Fans will be asked to remove any American Indian themed face paint prior to passing security screening outside the stadium, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of like the NASCAR thing, right? With NASCAR, they said for years and years, they tried to sway, they tried to kind of discourage fans, to use, I guess, the words in the Chiefs article. They tried to discourage fans from bringing Confederate flags. But the thing is, they never really enforced it. They didn't do anything about it. They just tried to discourage it. But of course, people still came in with them. Only now are they banning it. And you can see the outrage, right? There's this whole crowd of people who are now done with NASCAR, and they hate it, and they hate how they're taking away part of their history, and they're trying to control what flag they can bring in. And even though, you know, they think they're doing something about it, NASCAR's ratings have only gone up since then, and the sport has been fine. And they have reached a whole new demographic of people because they are no longer letting these people bring in a flag that represents a very dark time in America. So with the Chiefs are now taking the NASCAR approach to things, and they are now saying, no more headdresses, no more face paint. If you want to paint your face, you can paint your face, but if you do, you know, the lines under the cheeks, and, you know, a line on the forehead, if you start doing these things that remind people of, that resemble Native American culture, you can wash your face outside the stadium and then come in. If you're wearing one of those garments, you can remove it. And I'm going to assume they're probably going to take it from you or tell you to go put it back in your car. Maybe they'll hold it for you until after the game. I have no idea. But you have a bunch of people who are very upset about this. A bunch of Chiefs fans who are very upset about this. And now I have seen there are some out there that have said they understand that. And they are fine with that, but the thing that they don't want to be touched is the chop. They do not want the chop to be touched, and I think that they do touch on it in the article. There have been discussions around the chop, but at least as of right now, they do not have any immediate plans to ban it. And like I said, I don't know enough about the actual chop motion itself. The chop motion itself, to me, I don't know. When I look at it, I don't necessarily think Native Americans, but I could be wrong. I very well could be wrong. But I know I'm not wrong about the chant. The chant itself, again, it's really cool. And to hear 50,000+ people in unison do that chant, it is so awesome. It is so cool. Whenever I watch an NFL Films video and it's about the Chiefs, whether it be about a game that they played in the play, whatever it might be, I am always so excited to listen to the chant. To hear that cinematic scene, you hear the chant and it's in slow motion. It's so cool to me. But we cannot act like it is not stereotypical. We cannot act like that is not a very derogatory, what would you call it? That's a very derogatory symbol, a very derogatory sound. I don't really know what you call it. But it's derogatory of Native Americans. And I think that that should be a very easy thing for them to ban. Now, obviously, I'm guessing they say they've talked to Native American groups since 2014. So maybe they're going to revisit this. Maybe they already have revisited this. Maybe they're going to continue to revisit this. And they're going to continue to talk about it. Clearly now at this point, they have decided, whether it be on their own accord or with the help of some of these Native American groups, they do not want people wearing these headdresses anymore. They are officially banning it. They don't want people painting their face like Native Americans. That's great. Awesome. But I think the next step is to ban the chant. If you don't want to ban the chop, ban the chant. Come up with something else. Come up with a different version of it. Come up with something else that's really catchy. But, maybe you contact an artist. Maybe you contact a composer. I have no clue. Come up with a different kind of chant. Who knows? Come up with something else that can just catch on. Again, change can be very, very difficult. But change happens everywhere. It happens all around the world. It happens for everybody. And the thing that you have to be able to do is you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to adapt, especially when the change is for good, right? The Chiefs they're not changing, they're not banning Native American headdresses because screw the people. They're not banning Native American face paint, to say, screw your rights, we're going to do what we're going to do. They're banning these things because there's a group of people that it resembles that don't appreciate it. They're doing it for all the right reasons. So I don't understand why, well, I won't say that. So I understand why it is that there are people out there that have a problem with it because they can't look past their own nose, is what it is. They can't look past their own nose. They can't see past themselves to understand why it is that these things are bad. Because in their mind, it's just like with the Washington football team, right? You have people out there that still to this day think that Washington should have kept their name because when they think about that word, they don't associate it with Native Americans. But the thing is that's your problem. That is not their concern. All right? You as the white guy, just because you don't picture Native Americans when you hear the word doesn't mean Native Americans don't hear that word and then think about the history of that word. Sometimes you just have to, some people, they really struggle with this. Man, you gotta use some empathy. You gotta use some sympathy. You have to be able to listen to the affected party. One of my standpoints, and I unapologetically say this, if you are not a part of the affected group, your opinion, while you are entitled to it, you have every right to have your opinion means jack. If you're not a part of the affected party, your opinion does not mean anything. When it comes to the Washington football team, the only opinions that matter were Native Americans. If the Native Americans wanted it changed, that is all that matters. When it comes to the Chiefs, if Native Americans have a problem with anything revolving around the Chiefs, they should change it. It doesn't matter what any other demographic of people say. I am not of Native American. Technically, my opinion doesn't mean squat. I will be the first to say it. Technically, my opinion, it does not mean squat. But I side with Native Americans because I know it's the right thing to do. Native Americans throughout history have been so mistreated by America. So mistreated. To this day, they are still so mistreated. And they were almost wiped out to extinction by the settlers. So when I look at what the Chiefs are doing right now, I applaud them. I'm very happy that the Chiefs are moving forward in a positive direction. They're moving forward to be more politically correct. They're moving forward to be less insensitive. They're not trying to offend anybody. They're trying to move forward in the right direction. I just think the last thing for them to do is to change the chant. Now, if a bunch of Native Americans come out and they start talking about how it doesn't bother them and they're fine with it, then okay. I would have a bit of a hard time believing that is what they're going to say about that chant. But I would assume at some point in time, maybe it's not this year, maybe it's not even next year, I would assume the next thing to go eventually is the chant. And they're going to change it into something else. They're going to change it into maybe a different flow, it's a different pattern, something that doesn't resemble Native Americans. That would be my thought. But to anybody who, is all of a sudden saying that, oh, their history's being taken away, oh, I don't know if I can support this team anymore, I gotta boycott this team, the boycott crowd, all that stuff, they will not miss you. They simply won't. NASCAR does not miss all the fans that are so in love with the Confederate flag that they don't want to watch the races anymore. They don't miss them. Alright, there's a bunch of people that didn't like that the NBA was going to allow players to start repping Black Lives Matter on their jerseys, and they put it on the court. There's a lot of people that don't like that. A lot of people who are saying, oh, we're boycotting the NBA. Well, the NBA is doing fine. They do not miss you. It'll be the same, the people who hated protesting during the anthem. The NFL did not miss you. Even though their message might have been, I think their message was a bit more aimed at Trump. They were a bit more concerned with Trump, which is why they took the stance they did originally. But the NFL, overall, did not miss you. And that's just the way it is. The Chiefs will not miss anybody who is so in love with wearing Native American headwear and face paint. They will not miss people who are so in love with that they can't support the team anymore because it's been taken away from them. You will not be missed. You gotta be flexible. You gotta change with the times. You need to listen. Open your ears. Open your heart. Listen to the things that the affected parties are talking about. You'll learn something. You will learn something. And whether it's you learn how to finally use some empathy, maybe you'll finally learn how to look past your own life and put yourself into someone else's shoes, I have no idea. But I applaud the Kansas City Chiefs for moving in the direction that they are. I applaud the change. And we can only hope that more franchises out there across sports do the same thing and move in a more positive direction. As long as the change is for the better, that is all that matters. Anyways, coming up next, we're going to talk some Earl Thomas. He got into a bit of a scuffle over the weekend. We're going to discuss that. And coming up later, my final topic of the day, NFL.com came out with a list written by Daniel Jeremiah, very, very well-respected man in NFL circles, former scout. He wrote down his expectations for the offensive rookies in the NFL this season. I'm going to simply focus on the quarterbacks because I respect Daniel Jeremiah. I like Daniel Jeremiah. I listen to him occasionally. I do not quite understand his list. That coming up later.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about the Chiefs. They are planning to ban Native American headdresses, or I shouldn't say they're planning to. They have already banned Native American headdresses and face paint. It is something they are no longer going to allow their fans to use in an attempt to be more socially conscious of Native Americans, in an attempt to not offend that party anymore. They've had discussions revolving around their chop and the chant. They are planning to keep the chop. I am arguing that if you're going to keep the chop, if anything, they should look to ban the chant, find a new one, come up with one, I don't know, contact a musician, an artist, and just think of a new one. Think of one that isn't stereotypical of Native Americans. And again, to the people out there, diehard Chiefs fans, look, I understand. Change can be very, very difficult. But again, when you're a human being on Earth is forever changing. We are forever changing. Society in general is forever changing. And to be a rigid person, to be stuck in the past, and to want things to stay like they were in the past, your life is always going to be that much more difficult. It is much, much better to be a flexible person when you are a human being on Earth. Even animals. Animals, they change. The climate changes, they learn to adapt, plants adapt, though everything is about adapting. So I just think it's better. The Chiefs, they're trying to make a change for the better, and that is what is important. Anyways, so chemistry when it comes to teams, whether it be in basketball, but especially in basketball, but whether it be basketball, baseball, football, whatever sport it is, chemistry is a very, very important thing. And when it comes to the NFL, when I think of teams where chemistry was always very, very important, the culture of the team was always, priority number one was their culture. I think of teams like the Seattle Seahawks. Their culture, their chemistry was always so important. The Legion of Boom, Russell Wilson, that defense, they had a culture, and you either fit into their culture or they got rid of you, right? They were not going to let anybody tear apart that team. I think of a team like the New England Patriots. They took some flyers on players who were considered trouble. Randy Moss, Ocho Cinco. There's a running back, Dylan. And he actually ended up having some good seasons there, but he was a troubled player. But the thing is that he bought into the Patriots system. He bought into their chemistry, and he worked. A guy like Ocho Cinco, he went to the team, he tried, it just didn't work. Randy Moss, it worked for a season. Eventually, it just wasn't really working anymore, and they went ahead and they got rid of him. The Patriots are all about their system and their chemistry. They do not you are not bigger than that team. Another team I think of is the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens, you think about some of the leaders on that team. Think about some of the old school leaders. You have Ray Lewis, of course. Ed Reed. You think about a guy like Shannon Sharp. Terrell Suggs. You think maybe some of the newer school leaders, and this guy isn't really new school, but he was on the Ravens, not when Ray Lewis was there, but more recently, a guy like Steve Smith. He bought into their culture, and he became one of the leaders of that team. A guy like Eric Weddle, C.J. Mosley, right? You think of some of these guys, even Joe Flacco. I mean, he was a big part of their culture. He's the quarterback of the team. Now, many people would say that team was really ran by the defense. Many people would say that it was more like Ray Lewis who was leader of that team, and it was more Terrell Suggs, not necessarily Joe Flacco. But when you're the quarterback, you have to be bought into the culture, right? You gotta be a part of it. So I would go ahead and give some of that to Flacco. And I bring up the culture of a team being really, really important because Earl Thomas is now no longer in Baltimore because he just simply did not really fit in to the culture. Or I won't say maybe it's not that he fit into the culture, but he put the culture in jeopardy if he was to be on the team any longer. So Earl Thomas, he ended up getting in a fight with one of the safeties, Chuck Clark, who was a very, very impressive safety. I think they got him in one of the later rounds, and he's actually turned out to be a pretty solid safety. And he got into a fight with him. This isn't the first time that Earl Thomas, though, has had an incident in Baltimore. And I want you to keep in mind, he's been there for only one season. So in one season, this is everything that he did. He had a heated exchange with one of their better defensive linemen, Brandon Williams. He came late to meetings. He, of course, had this incident with Chuck Clark in which he threw a punch. He had an off-the-field incident involving his brother and his wife. I'm not going to get into all of it, but go ahead and look it up. It was insane. And ultimately, the Ravens have decided they don't need this guy on their team anymore. Now, it's that thing again. I've talked about other players before where when your talent is there, when you're a great player, teams will sometimes overlook mistakes and incidents and, they'll maybe suspend you, they might fine you, but they're gonna find any way to keep you on the team. Earl Thomas last season was one of his worst seasons as a pro in the NFL. His overall grade was a 76. His run defense severely dropped off. His pass rushing grade severely dropped off. But his coverage grade was still elite, but in every other category he fell off. Now, maybe it was just how the Ravens used him. I don't quite know. I know that on Pro Football Focus, I think they said he was targeted 13 times the whole season, and I think he allowed 5 catches. So, in coverage, he was still great. But in every other aspect, he wasn't that great. And I know one clip a lot of people have stuck in their mind is the Ravens' first playoff game against the Titans, when Derrick Henry was running, and he basically stiff-armed Earl Thomas into being an extra blocker for him. I mean, he turned Earl Thomas around and had Earl running with him and not actually, trying to tackle him. I know a lot of people, they use that against him. Look, I still think Earl Thomas is a good player. I think he can still contribute to another team. But as soon as I saw that he had punched Chuck Clark, I instantly said, alright, the Ravens, they need to cut him. They need to get rid of him. He needs to be off the team. And there were the reports that were coming out immediately following the incident that team leaders on Baltimore wanted him gone. They did not want him on the team anymore. And the team obliged. I think they originally tried to search for a trade, but the thing is that if a team was going to trade for him, they would have to take his contract, and I think he signed a 4-year, $55 million deal or so with the team. So a team would have to take that contract. I don't really think a team wanted that contract. It had $32 million guaranteed on it. I think at the moment, as it stands, he has basically been paid $22 million for his 1 year. Now, the Ravens, when they decided to go ahead and cut him, they said it was under conduct detrimental to the team. By doing so, they not only voided the rest of his guaranteed money on the contract, but I believe they're going to come after his money. They're going to try and come after that signing bonus they gave him. And I think Earl is going to lose that battle. I am sure Earl's going to try and fight it. He's going to try and keep it. He might even try and counter for something. I don't entirely know. But the Ravens are going to try and come after that money. They're going to get it. So I don't really know how much Earl is going to have made in his 1 year, but it will not be $22 million. So the question now just comes about, which team is going to sign him? At the moment, as I'm recording this, he has not signed with a team. And there's certain names that are being flown around. I know that some people, they're talking about Dallas. Maybe he would actually go to Dallas, because he already talked about while he was still in Seattle, in his final season with Seattle. He literally, and, before I get into all that, if we even go back to his last year in Seattle, Earl Thomas wasn't a great team guy. I know that he did hold out a bit before the season started, but ultimately he wasn't going to hold out during the season. He said he was going to be there for his guys and he was going to play. Respectable, very, very respectable. But then, after a game in which Seattle beat Dallas, he goes to the head coach after the game, says, "Come pick me up, come get me." The last image of him in Seattle after his injury was him flipping off Pete Carroll, flipping off the Seattle sideline. That is the last image of him in Seattle. And then he goes over to Baltimore, instantly starts having problem with teammates, apparently coming into meetings late. He has the off-field incident with his brother and his wife. I mean, it was just a whole mess. Earl Thomas at this point in time, I know in his last season with Seattle, I think Pro Football Focus, while he was playing before his injury, they had him as the highest graded defensive player in the league. Maybe it's just him coming off of the injury. I don't know. It could be him just coming off of the injury. He needed to shake off some rust. It could have just been him learning Baltimore's system, and so he just had a bit of a down year. I don't really know. But it seems like at this point, you're getting an average safety who comes with a lot of noise, is what it seems like. So when I look at the teams, though, and I think, because I still think he's a good player. I do not think Earl Thomas is garbage and he shouldn't be on the team. I think he can still play. I think that he's still better than a lot of other safeties out there. But I do believe there are better safeties than him. When I look at possible teams to go ahead and grab him, I think Dallas would be a perfect landing spot. I really do. And the reason being is because their defense has zero playmakers in the backfield. Zero. None of their corners are really that great. They have, if anything, one good safety in HaHa Clinton-Dix, and even then, I think he had one really elite season when he got put on the NFL Top 100 Players list, and since then, I don't think he's been back on it, and he's just kind of been in the league. I look at the fact that, who'd be on the opposite side? I think maybe Xavier Woods, who's okay. He's a good safety, but Jerry Jones is all about big names, right? Jerry Jones loves having a big name. What is the bigger name on the free agent market right now than Earl Thomas? Would it be Clowney? Well, I don't really think that they need help on the defensive line. By all accounts, from some of the reports I'm seeing, Aldon Smith is looking outstanding, and he looks apparently like the Aldon Smith of old. Now, they always there's always a bit of a hyperbolic when it comes to these reports. Everyone looks like a superstar in camp and everything. Just wait until the games start. But by all accounts, it seems like their pass rush is probably going to be pretty good. So maybe they're not going to go after Clowney. And also, Clowney's price tag is still really up there. But Earl Thomas, would he take a discount to go play in Dallas? I know Dallas has cleared some cap space. I think they reworked a bit of Tyron Smith's contract to free up a little bit more cap space. Could they go and grab Earl Thomas? Maybe. I think it might be worth a shot. What's the worst thing they'd have to lose? They let Byron Jones go. He was the best dude in their secondary. They let Jeff Heath go ahead and walk, and he wasn't anything special, but he was one of their main safeties. What is the worst thing that could happen? Is he going to punch another teammate? Well, then, they just go ahead and cut him, and it wouldn't cost them anything. In Dallas, there isn't really, there's not really a culture there in Dallas. And what is the culture in Dallas? What is what is there really for Earl Thomas to mess up? And I'm being serious. Is he gonna ruffle Dak's feathers? I don't really think so. Is he gonna ruffle Zeke? I don't think so. DeMarcus Lawrence? Probably not. And I think that Earl Thomas, he'd probably be on his best behavior as well because of what happened with the Ravens. I think he'd probably be on his best behavior, especially because it would be in Texas, and apparently he really wanted Dallas to go grab him. It is worth noting, I think it's kind of interesting, the Chiefs, they tried to sign Earl Thomas to a 1-year deal. They tried to sign him to a 1-year deal to pair him with Tyrann Mathieu. And he turned it down because Baltimore offered him a huge deal. And obviously the Chiefs went and won the Super Bowl, the Ravens didn't even win the playoff game, and they cut Earl Thomas. So I don't know who would you really call. I guess the winner there is Earl Thomas's bank account. That's really that's the true winner, but even then, his bank account's about to take a hit once the Ravens come and reclaim some of that money. So I really do think that it would be worth Dallas to maybe try and have a conversation with him. Maybe you make an incentive layered deal to make sure, like, in any event that you do anything conduct detrimental to the team, like, you forego your money. I don't know, maybe you give him some kind of deal like that. I don't know if Earl would necessarily want to accept it, but it is worth a shot, in my mind. But doesn't this say a lot about Baltimore heading into the season? Baltimore knows they have a roster that can repeat. And while Earl Thomas did allow them to play a little bit of a different style of defense, I think, because Baltimore, I think they were one of they were either the number one team or one of the top teams when it came to blitzing. Earl Thomas on their team, with his skill set, he actually allowed them to play a little bit of a different defense. A defense that, while they blitzed, they were still able to make, quarterbacks hold the ball a bit longer. I was reading a whole article on Pro Football Focus about it. So they went ahead and they moved off of him to save the team chemistry. I don't know if Earl Thomas was one of the leaders on this team, if I'm going to be completely honest. Seeing the reports about team leaders wanting him off the team, it makes me think, how much did they even like him being there that whole season? How much did they like him? Was he a leader on that team at all? It really does make me think about that. But going into the season, I mean, Baltimore, since they had Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Shannon Sharp, all those guys, they have been all about the culture of the team. The Baltimore culture is huge, and it's one of the reasons why this team, over the past, 20 years, why they have been such a consistent franchise. Even with Joe Flacco at the helm, and Flacco was never an elite quarterback, he was elite in the playoffs, but was never an elite quarterback really in the regular season. Even with Flacco as their quarterback, they didn't really have losing seasons. I think they had one losing season under Joe Flacco, and it was the year that he got hurt. There's a reason they've been so consistent. And it's because they draft the right people, they've always had, good scouting, but that their culture always wins out. They know who they are, and they don't let a single player, no matter how talented you may be, they don't let you, rock the boat. They don't let you hurt anything about it. So I do think that this says a lot about the Ravens. The Ravens, they know they have a great chance to repeat. Their schedule isn't too difficult. In fact, I think, I don't know off the top of my head what their schedule is, but I know that their schedule, I think, is like middle of the pack, maybe even in the bottom half of the league. So there's people out there who think that the Ravens might go 16-0 because they're so good, right? Added Calais Campbell for nothing, re-signed Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, you've got all these good pieces. Even though their pass rush, they don't really have a standout star pass rusher, their pass rush is still great. Lamar Jackson, he just has another year of experience and he has a chip on his shoulder. He wants to win a playoff game. Hollywood Brown, he has put on, he's put on like 20 plus pounds of muscle in the offseason. He's ready to have another good year. Mark Andrews, another year at tight end. Their offensive line, while it might suffer a bit because they lost Marshall Yanda, it still should be very, very good. They still got their tackles there. This team is set to repeat. And they were not going to allow Earl Thomas to rock that boat. And I think that is very, very respectable. And I think that really sends a message to anybody who ever ends up on that team. Anyone that they sign in free agency, that they draft, whoever it is, you are not bigger than that team. It doesn't matter how good you are. You are not bigger than that team. You are not better than the culture. And you either fit in or you get out. And I think that says a lot. Anyways, coming up next, final topic of the day. We'll get to Cam Newton in we'll get to him in my next podcast, because I got a lot I want to talk about with him. Coming up next, though, final topic of the day. NFL.com came out with a list made by the one and only Daniel Jeremiah, where he went ahead and listed out the expectations for offensive rookies in the NFL. I'm going to strictly focus on the rookie quarterbacks, because I think the things he wrote down about them are very, very interesting. That coming up next.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Final topic, last segment. Talked a little bit about Earl Thomas and the situation with the Ravens, cutting him and everything. Again, when it comes to Earl, I think he's still a good player. I think he can help out a lot of secondaries, especially a team like the Cowboys. But the Ravens had every right to cut him. The Ravens, they have always had a very, very strong culture with that team. They have always preached about their culture. No one is above it. No one is stronger than it. Guys like Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Shannon Sharp, they are the guys who put that culture in the team and instilled it, and it has held strong to this day. So, yeah, they went ahead and they cut him. This team does not need anybody rocking the boat. They have a chance to go to the Super Bowl this year. They have a chance to really repeat the success, maybe even do a bit better. You can't do much better than 14-2. There's people who think they might go 15-1, 16-0. I don't know if I would go that far, but I could definitely see them repeating and being like 14-2, 13-3, being another one of the top seeds in the NFL in general. And this year especially is more important than ever because there's only one team per conference now gets a bye week. So they might really make a run for that. But anyways, getting into the final topic of the day. So, NFL.com came out with a list, or maybe you could say projections, but it's the best and worst case projections for notable offensive NFL rookies. And this was made by the one and only Daniel Jeremiah, who is an NFL media analyst, used to be a scout, and really knows his football. And I like Daniel Jeremiah. I've listened to his podcast, Move the Sticks, which is a really good show, and I like what he has to say. I think he's a very smart man. But I went ahead and I looked at his list. And I paid attention to really the quarterbacks, because that is, of course, that's really the glamour thing that we're all really interested to see, because, for Henry Ruggs, the wide receiver, I mean, his impact on the Raiders isn't going to be nearly what Joe Burrow's impact is for the Bengals. Who is it? The running back that the Chiefs drafted, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, Edwards-Helaire, his impact on the Chiefs will not be nearly what a guy like Tua's is on the Dolphins if he becomes the starter. So the quarterbacks are very interesting to watch, because we know reps are extremely important for rookie quarterbacks. All the practices, preseason games, those things are very important for rookie quarterbacks to experience. And this season, because of COVID, you're not really getting that. So he went ahead and he talked about Burrow, Tua, and Justin Herbert with the Chargers. I'm going to go ahead and focus on Burrow. So here is his best case scenario for Joe Burrow. He said he's the unquestioned day one starter and hits the ground running. The Bengals incorporate key elements of the LSU offense and Burrow flourishes. The offensive line is able to hold up in 5-man protections, and AJ Green returns from injury to have a huge year. Well, wow. Way to go out on a limb there, Daniel. Here is my best case scenario for the Bengals this season. That Burrow, he's going to be the starter. Who else would be the starter of the team? Like, that's strange to me. Of course, Burrow is going to be the starter. He is the only reason anybody is really going to be tuning into Bengals. The more people are going to watch the Bengals this year than they did last year. Let's go ahead and make that very clear. More people will watch the Bengals this year than last year. But the best case scenario is that Burrow goes out there and doesn't die. If we're gonna be honest. I mean, the best case scenario is that he doesn't go out there and get killed. Their offensive line is terrible. They are in one of the worst divisions when it comes to pass rushing fronts. I mean, really? The Ravens, the Steelers, and the Browns? Oh my god. He is going to have to deal with so much. So, I mean, the best case scenario is he goes out there and doesn't die. I think that Burrow, in his projections, his projected stats for Burrow are 3,500 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. I honestly think he's being a bit too nice with the interceptions. I think he's being a bit too nice. The touchdowns, I would believe it, maybe around 22 or so, 22, 23, 20. I could definitely see that, but you're telling me that with limited OTAs, limited training camp, limited practices, no preseason games, you're telling me he's only going to go out there and throw 14? I just don't believe it, especially with that kind of protection he has. Unless they're going to run an offense that is kind of run first, and they're going to try their best to not throw it, they're going to give him easy throws. I just don't believe that. With guys like Tyler Boyd and AJ Green, guys who can stretch the field, I would believe they're going to throw the ball downfield. And while Burrow is a very accurate passer, there's no way. There's no way. I would put those interceptions like at 17, 18. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that's a terrible year. I think that everyone needs to drastically lower their expectations. So his worst case scenario for the Bengals is the Bengals struggle to protect Burrow and he takes a beating in the pocket. Green fails to recapture his Pro Bowl form, and they are forced to play from behind on a weekly basis. The rookie QB gets shut down late in the season to protect his body and confidence. Now that's very true, right? Confidence has been something that's talked about all the time, especially for quarterbacks. The last thing you want is for your rookie quarterback to lose his confidence in his first year. Because if they lose their confidence in their play, if all of a sudden they don't think they can do it anymore, there goes the quarterback. And I really do think that is a strong possibility. But the Bengals have nobody else to throw out there. They really don't. They need Burrow to get live game action. This team has struggled to fill seats, in this season especially, their filling seats is not really gonna be a thing. But they have struggled to get people's butts in seats. People don't watch the Bengals. Burrow is literally it. He is supposed to be the franchise savior. So, when it comes to Burrow in this season, I think the reasonable expectations are probably like 3,500 yards, that's about right. 20 or so touchdowns, I think that's pretty accurate. But after that, man, I think he's going to throw like 18 or so interceptions. If this offense just looks anything like the LSU offense, Joe Burrow, he let that ball fly in LSU. He let that ball absolutely fly when he was there. So I really do think that there's a chance he throws like 18, especially if you want to get the most out of AJ Green, you gotta target him downfield. If you want to get the most out of Tyler Boyd, you do gotta target him downfield, although he can, they both can obviously run intermediate routes, like they're both good receivers, but if you really want to be able to use their ability and use their speed and their catching, you gotta go downfield. And I just think he's going to struggle. When it comes to records and everything, I haven't really tried to think about what the record's going to be, but the best case scenario, I think for Burrow, I think that was kind of a no duh. Like, no duh. You hope the offensive line, was able to hold up and protect. That terrible offensive line, yeah, I just don't think so. Worst case scenario, yeah, no, he's gonna take a beating. I think no matter what, he's gonna take a beating. He's in that division, no way. No way he comes out of this season completely healthy. I think he's gonna have some serious bumps and bruises. I think there's a chance he might even miss a game because of the kind of defensive fronts he's going to face with their offensive line being so bad. In this next draft, the Bengals really, really need to draft him a tackle. They just have to. They need to protect their investment. So moving on to Tua Tagovailoa. Obviously the number 5 overall pick out of Alabama, went to the Dolphins, the place that everyone thought he was going to go. Here's the best case scenario according to Daniel Jeremiah for Tua. Tua becomes the starter about 4 weeks into the season, replacing Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Dolphins defense keeps him in every game, and Tua excels in the run-pass options. He does a better job of protecting himself than he did in Alabama, throwing the ball away more frequently instead of taking a hit, and shows no sign of hip injury he suffered last fall. His projected stats: 2,250 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Now, I'm not entirely with him. I think Tua could really end up being the starter. I really do think there is a chance Tua becomes the starter. I also believe, though, there is a chance that he actually just sits down, has a redshirt year, and maybe comes in for like the final 2 games of the season. But I think that they could really try and do what the Chiefs did with Mahomes. Because he did have a really terrible injury while he was in Alabama. Broke his hip. Ended his season. People were trying to figure out how far was he going to plummet in the draft. The Dolphins made sure to not let him plummet. They took him 5th overall. And I think it was a really, really good choice. I do think it was. They passed on Drew Brees at one point. They're not going to pass on, as some people have called him, the left-handed Russell Wilson. But when it comes to his projected stats, I can't really say it's too wrong. They've had 2 receivers opt out, Allen Hurns and not Devontae Parker. They've had Allen Hurns and Albert Wilson. They still have Devontae Parker, but I've kind of talked about this before. Their receiving core from tight end to receiver, it's kinda Devontae Parker or bust. Gesicki is a nice young tight end who you would assume is going to get better and only get better. You assume he hasn't hit his ceiling yet. But, their offensive line is not great. Their running back game, their situation there is not great. They did draft a tackle. They did address the defense in free agency and even in the draft. And of course, they went ahead and they made the biggest investment in Tua. They appear to have a really, really good head coach. Their team played really hard last year. They did not quit. It was just they had a lack of talent. It was the talent discrepancy between them and every other team was just a lot. But they played hard. They do believe in their coach, and I think that they will definitely, I think that Tua can really thrive with this team. Now, the worst case scenario, according to Daniel Jeremiah, is Tua is in and out of the lineup due to nagging injuries. He has a difficult time adjusting to throwing in tighter windows at the NFL level. The former Tide star has a couple big games, but the inconsistency is an issue. And I do think that is real. He brought up that in the best case scenario that Tua learns basically how to get rid of the ball and learns how to slide, not take the big hits. That was a problem with him in college. Tua always kind of played like he was a bit more elusive than he actually was. He definitely took some hits he shouldn't. In the NFL, dude, you can't do that. The speed of some of these defenders, how big some of these guys are, J.J. Watt, Aaron Donald, some of these linebackers out there, Bobby Wagner, Eric Kendrick, some of these guys, you do not want to think you can just outrun these guys. They will hit you and they will hit you hard and you might break something. So that is something that you do hope he can get better at. But the thought is, what if he takes one wrong hit and he injures his hip again? What on earth is Miami gonna do? Which is why some people have said maybe he should sit for the whole year. Just take a redshirt year. Don't see the field. Let that hip completely heal, learn from the bench, do what they did with Mahomes, do what the Packers did with Aaron Rodgers. Don't start him day one. I can't say I disagree with those people. I think it might be a really, really good option for him to sit back, watch Fitzpatrick work, watch how he handles himself, watch how he prepares, all of the above. Let Fitzpatrick take the hits. But maybe when it comes to when they get to a patch in their schedule where they get some easy games, if winning isn't really important for the team, maybe they go ahead and put Tua in and let him get some of those rookie struggles out of the way. Put him against an easier team. They still might, they'll still be difficult for him because it is an NFL team. But don't make him face, and I don't know if they have them on I guess I'll go with this, right? Don't make him face Bill Belichick's defense. If you want him to face any defense, you'd rather him face, like, the Bengals defense, right? Don't put him against Bill Belichick, because Bill Belichick will torture Tua the whole day. Even with maybe all the opt-outs on the Patriots, he will torture Tua. But you'd rather let him play someone like the Bengals. You'd rather him face that defense. They're terrible. What are they really going to do? They have some good players in the secondary, but across the board, not that great. So I do think that I like his projections for Tua a bit better. I think they are a lot less on the nose than Joe Burrow's. But I guess the biggest thing is just we need to even wait and see if Tua even starts. We need to see if he even does see the field. I would be interested to see how do the ratings change from game number 1. Let's just say they start the season with Fitzpatrick. How do the ratings change from Fitzpatrick to Tua? I would be very interested to see how they change. How far do they go up? Because I think they would probably skyrocket for that game. The first time people get a chance to see Tua out there, I think it will be an absolute show. At least you hope it's going to be a show. Lastly, let's go ahead and let's get to Justin Herbert, who was drafted by the Los Angeles Chargers. I talked about a list from CBS. They think there's a possible quarterback competition with the Chargers. I do not. I don't think Herbert even really has a chance to start. I think the only way that Herbert gets a chance to start is if the Chargers start like 0-5. If they start 0-5 or 0-4 and Taylor just looks awful, they might go ahead and throw Herbert in there. But other than that, I don't think he's going to see the field. But here's the best case scenario according to Dan Jeremiah for Justin Herbert. He's not rushed into the lineup. Tyrod Taylor starts the first half of the season before the rookie takes over. Herbert has immediate success, his confidence grows, and his athleticism fits beautifully into this new version of the Chargers offense. His projected stats, 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 200 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. I did think it was kind of interesting that he incorporated the rushing yards and rushing touchdowns for Herbert, and he didn't do any for Tua, and he didn't do any for Burrow. When I think of the 3 quarterbacks, you'd probably think of Tua as more of the runner than either of them, although Tua is an outstanding passer. But whatever. I'm going to assume he included that in because their current starter is Taylor, who is seen as a mobile quarterback, a Lamar Jackson type of quarterback. Their athleticism, his athleticism compared to Herbert, I don't even think there is a comparison. Tyrod Taylor is a far, far more elusive and quick athlete than Herbert is, but I can understand the point he's making. I did think it was quite interesting to see, though, his projected stats. He thinks that Herbert is going to throw almost as many touchdowns as Tua with less picks, and seems to be that he's going to play less games than Tua. Now, I'm assuming this is because of the sheer amount of talent that the Chargers have. Eckler, Allen, Williams, Hunter Henry at tight end. They have a okay offensive line. It's not great, but it's okay. Probably better than Miami's. I'm assuming that's why he's saying that Herbert is going to have the stats that he has. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't think Herbert's going to see the field at all. I think the best case scenario for Herbert is that he just does not see the field. I think it's like the best case scenario for all of these guys really is that they don't see the field. This is going to be such a tough season for every rookie quarterback. We are going to completely need to change our expectations of these rookies. We cannot expect them to light it up. We cannot expect them to be throwing for 4,000 yards, 20, 25 touchdowns, and like 10 or 14 picks. We just can't expect that. These guys are going to struggle. But his worst case scenario for Herbert, I thought was interesting. He said he doesn't play a snap the entire season. I think this outcome is a possibility, and I actually don't think it's a bad idea for year 1. The Chargers are very high on Taylor, and that might allow Herbert to sit and learn during his rookie season. So it's the worst case scenario, but he doesn't think it's a bad idea for his first year. It's a bit of a conundrum with that reasoning. I'm going to assume he says it's the worst case scenario because obviously there's no experience like on the field experience. There's no what better way to get used to the speed of the game than to actually play in the game. Sitting on the bench is great and all. It can really help you learn some things from the sideline, but there's nothing quite like getting that in-game action, being thrown into the fire, dealing with the hits, having to read the defenses, actually attempting to make the throws. I'm assuming that's what he means. But to go back to all the projected stats, so for Burrow, he's projected 3,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, 14 picks. For Tua, it's 2,250 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks. And for Justin Herbert, it is 1,600 passing yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 picks. And then he included 200 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. So, of those seasons, who is the best? Obviously, he's saying that Burrow's gonna start from day one, and he's gonna do all that stuff. With Tua, it's when is he actually gonna be able to see the field, because they might just go ahead and let Ryan Fitzpatrick take the hits for a bit. And then as for Justin Herbert, the Chargers really, really like Taylor. They seem to really want him to be their starter, and that is the way that they've moved this entire offseason in Hard Knocks. It has been that Taylor's going to be the starter. They have this new offense they want to run that they could have never run with Phillip Rivers, because Phillip Rivers is the slowest thing next to Tom Brady. And I just think it's very interesting. I am so excited to see all of these games. I cannot wait. Week 1, I am going to watch. I might not be able to watch every single game, all the way through, but I'm definitely going to catch all the highlights, and I'm going to definitely make my notes of the games. I'm going to really pay attention to the rookies, because I want to see what things are they struggling with. I think if there's anything the guys are going to struggle with, it is going to just be the speed. The speed of the game is really, really going to be the difference for them. The NFL is so much faster than college. So much faster. Even on TV, I'll watch college football. It looks so much slower than the NFL. I can only imagine what it's like on the field. But even then, week 1, I think only one of these guys are going to be starting. And I think it's Burrow. The Dolphins, I think they will be cautious with Tua, because they do not want to hurt him. The Chargers, they're trying to go to the playoffs this year, so they're going to go with Taylor. But no matter when any of these guys start, whenever these guys see the field, no matter what, I think the thing you can take away from this list, from all the reporting that's been going on since the NFL offseason even began, when COVID came about, the biggest takeaway is just, these guys are going to struggle. This is probably going to be one of the worst years when it comes to the overall, the average rookie quarterback stats. I think that guy, last year, Kyler Murray looked pretty good. Gardner Minshew looked pretty good. Some of these rookies, they actually looked pretty damn good. I think last season, compared to this season for rookie quarterbacks, people are going to look at this past season, they're going to go, oh my god, look at how much better they were. That class was so much better, and then, but it's no, probably not. Actually, probably not really. It was just this season was a goddamn mess, and these rookies got thrown into the fire when they were underprepared. I really think that's what's going to happen. If I had to make a prediction on which quarterback I think is honestly going to look the best, if they were to see the field, let's say, if they were to see the field, which quarterback do I think is going to look the best? I honestly think it'd be Herbert. I think the Chargers have so much talent on that team. No, I don't think any of their offensive players opted out. Maybe one did, but off the top of my head, I don't remember any of them notable players opting out. Their defense is great. I think their defense will keep them in so many games that Herbert could actually win if he just doesn't turn the ball over. If anyone was going to be who was going to look the best, I do believe it would be Herbert. But again, I think it's Taylor's show for this season. Next season, will it be? Probably not. But for this season, I do believe so. Man, the countdown continues. NFL kickoff is soon. I cannot wait for my next podcast because I have a lot of stuff I want to talk about. But anyways, thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you. And have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.